The forest was completely silent, until one man began climbing a tree so tall that a single mistake could end his life. There were no ropes, no safety harness, no helmet. Nothing stood between him and the deadly ground far below, only his bare hands, his ancient knowledge, and a desperate determination to reach one of nature's most dangerous treasures: wild honey. High above the forest floor, hidden inside a massive tree, thousands of wild bees protected their honey. Their buzzing could be heard from a distance. One wrong movement could send the entire swarm into attack. But the man kept climbing. Every branch shook beneath his weight. Every step could be his last. And what happened near the top would test not only his courage, but his will to survive. This is the incredible story of a traditional honey hunter who risked everything to collect honey from the tallest trees of the ancient forest. Deep inside a remote forest, where giant trees rise like towers above the land, honey hunting is more than a job. It is a tradition. For generations, people have learned how to find wild bee colonies hidden high inside ancient trees. They know which trees may contain honey, how to understand the movement of bees, and how to climb places that most people would never dare to approach. But knowledge does not remove danger. The forest is unpredictable. The trees are old. The branches can break without warning. And wild bees do not give away their honey easily. Early in the morning, before the sun had fully risen, the honey hunter prepared for the journey. The air was cold, and a thin layer of mist covered the forest. Water drops hung from leaves while distant birds called through the trees. He carried yet only a few simple tools: a small container, a cutting tool, a piece of cloth, and materials that could create smoke to calm the bees. There was no modern climbing equipment. No safety rope, no rescue team waiting below. If something went wrong, he would have to save himself. As he walked deeper into the forest, the ground became difficult to cross. Thick roots covered the path. Wet rocks made every step slippery. Sharp plants scratched against his legs. But the greatest danger was still waiting above. After hours of searching, he finally stopped. In front of him stood an enormous tree. Its trunk was wider than several people standing together. Its branches reached high into the sky, disappearing behind thick leaves. The man looked upward. Far above, he heard it. A deep and powerful buzzing. The sound was not coming from one or two bees. It was coming from thousands. Hid, near the upper part of the tree, was a massive wild beehive. The honey was there, but reaching it would be extremely dangerous. He placed his hand against the rough bark and studied the tree carefully. He searched for small natural openings, strong roots, and places where his hands could hold. This was not a normal climb. The tree did not have a ladder. There were no steps. Every movement had to be planned. Then, without hesitation, he began climbing. His fingers pressed against the bark. His feet searched for tiny spaces. Slowly, he lifted himself higher. At first, the climb seemed manageable, but after only a few minutes, the ground began to disappear beneath him. The people below became small. The forest floor looked distant. One fall from this height could cause serious injury, or worse. Still, he continued. He moved one hand upward, then one foot, then the other hand. Every movement required strength. The rough bark cut into his skin. His arms became tired. Sweat covered his face even though the morning air was cool. But stopping was also dangerous. If he lost his grip, there was nothing to catch him. As he climbed higher, the wind became stronger. The tree began to move. At first, the movement was small. Then the upper branches started swaying from side to side. The man froze. He wrapped both arms around the trunk and waited. Below him was a long fall. Above him was the hive. For several seconds, the forest seemed completely still. Then the wind slowed. He continued climbing. But now another danger appeared. The bees had noticed him. A few bees began flying around his head. Then dozens. Their buzzing became louder. The hunter covered part of his face and remained calm. He knew that sudden movements could make the bees more aggressive. He could not run. He could not jump. He could not climb down quickly. He was trapped high above the ground. His only choice was to keep moving carefully. Finally, after a long and exhausting climb, he reached a thick branch near the hive. He pulled himself onto it. But the branch was narrow and unstable. It bent beneath his weight. For a moment, the man lost his balance. His body moved toward the edge. His hand searched desperately for something to hold. Then he grabbed a smaller branch. The tree shook. Leaves fell around him. For one terrifying moment, it looked as if he might fall. But he held on. He slowly pulled himself back into a stable position. Now the hive was close. The buzzing was so loud that it filled the air. Thousands of bees moved across the honeycomb. The hive was enormous. Golden honey shone through the natural structure. But the bees were protecting it. The hunter carefully prepared the smoke. Smoke has been used by traditional honey hunters for generations. It can help calm the bees and make it easier to approach the hive. But using smoke high in a tree is difficult. The wind can blow it away. Too much smoke can create other dangers, and the hunter must still keep one hand free to hold the tree. He waited for the right moment. Then he slowly raised the smoking material toward the hive. The bees began moving. Some flew away from the honeycomb. Others circled around him. The buzzing became louder. He stayed calm. His face was covered, but his arms remained exposed. Suddenly, several bees landed on his skin. Then came the first sting. He quickly controlled his reaction. Another sting followed. Then another. Pain spread through his arm, but he did not let go. He knew that one sudden movement could cause him to lose his balance. He held tightly to the branch and continued working. The honey was only a short distance away, but that short distance was filled with danger. He slowly reached toward the hive. The branch moved again. His body leaned forward. The ground was far below. He could not focus on the height. He had to focus only on the next movement. With one hand holding the tree, he carefully used his tool to separate a section of the honeycomb. Golden honey began dripping. It ran over his hands. The smell filled the air, but the bees became more active. A large group began circling around him. The hunter tried to remain calm, but the branch suddenly shook. A loud cracking sound came from beneath him. The branch was weakening. He looked down. The wood had started to split. If it broke, he would fall. He had only seconds to decide. Should he leave the honey and climb back, or should he collect enough to make the dangerous journey worthwhile? He chose to continue, but faster. He carefully placed pieces of honeycomb into his container. Honey flowed over the edge. The container became heavier, and the heavier it became, the harder it was to balance. The branch continued bending. Then, crack! A small piece of wood broke away. The hunter immediately moved closer to the trunk. His heart raced. The bees continued buzzing around him. His hands were covered in honey. The bark was rough and difficult to grip. One mistake could send him into the empty space below. He secured the container, then he began the journey down. But climbing down was even harder than climbing up. When climbing upward, he could see where he was going. Now he had to search for footholds beneath him without always seeing them. His arms were tired. His legs were shaking. The bee stings were becoming more painful, and the honey container added extra weight. Slowly, he lowered one foot. He found a small opening in the bark. Then he moved his other foot one step, then another. But halfway down, his hand slipped. His body suddenly dropped. He grabbed the tree with both arms. The container swung beside him. For a moment, he was hanging against the trunk. His feet searched for support. Nothing. He tried again. His fingers pressed into the bark. Then one foot found a small branch. He pushed himself upward and regained his balance. He had survived another dangerous moment. But the climb was not over. The sun was now higher, and the forest had become warmer. His strength was fading. Every movement felt heavier. Still, he continued. He remembered the generations of honey hunters who had learned these skills before him. They had survived by understanding the forest. They respected the bees. They understood the trees. And they knew that courage did not mean having no fear. Courage meant continuing carefully, even when danger was close. After what felt like an endless journey, the ground finally came closer. His feet touched a large root. Then he stepped onto the forest floor. For several seconds, he stood silently. The climb was over. He was exhausted. His arms were covered with scratches. Bee stings marked his skin. His hands were tired and painful, but he was alive. And he had brought the honey down safely. He looked back at the giant tree. From the ground, it seemed impossible to believe that anyone could climb it without ropes. The hive was hidden high above. The danger could no longer be seen. But he knew what it had taken to reach it. The honey was not simply food. Every drop represented effort. Every piece carried the memory of the climb, the pain, the fear, the struggle, and the courage to continue. Traditional honey hunting is not about defeating nature. It is about understanding it. The hunter does not control the forest. He learns how to move through it. He studies the bees. He respects the tree. And he takes only what he needs. As the man walked away, the sound of the bees slowly disappeared behind him. The ancient tree remained standing. The forest returned to silence. But somewhere, high above, the hive continued to live, and the honey hunter carried home more than a container of golden honey. He carried the reward of survival, because sometimes the most valuable things are not hidden behind locked doors. Sometimes they are waiting at the top of a dangerous tree, protected by thousands of wild bees, reached only by those willing to face fear, and earned through courage, patience, skill, and struggle. Would you climb a giant tree with no ropes to collect wild honey? Or would you turn back when you heard the bees? Tell us in the comments. And if you enjoy incredible stories of human courage, dangerous traditions, and unbelievable skills, subscribe to Max Schreckers, because the world is full of extraordinary people. And some of the most incredible stories are still hidden deep inside the forest.